Philly is in a little bit of a weird place right now. I don't know if you've been seeing any of their fan pages and all of that, but Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, is actually on what they're calling, quote, the warm seat. Like, he just took the Eagles to the Super Bowl last year, but according to fans, Philly analysts, he could probably not get fired this year, but he's got a strong case to be fired next year if improvement doesn't happen, even though they've had a very great season overall. The record has been incredible. They've, skated in some games and mistakes have been made in other places. And now somehow Matt Patricia is running their defense out of nowhere. I don't know where that came from. But fans, analysts, they want good coaching changes to be made there by that team for him to change. He lost his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator last year. Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon have both gone on to very, very relatively impressive first years as head coaches. I'd say Jonathan Gannon has been pretty impressive with his tenure as the Cardinals, and they just completely upset the Eagles this past week in Week 17 and messed up chances to go ahead and take a hold on the NFC East or keep that charge in there. Let me ask you, are the team's failures this season fairly on Nick Sirianni?
No.
Where are they?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, you look at Nick Sirianni's record just in Philly, like for regional pundits and the fan base is coming out pretty much calling for his head at this point if he doesn't get this shit together next season. His first year in Philly, he went 9-8. And then 2022, he went 14-3. And then now what are they? 11-5? It's like they're doing well. It's just, I think it's overinflated because it is Philly, and Philly fans always feel like they're going to have the greatest teams in the whole world. I mean, look at between the Phillies and the Flyers and all the other fan bases that are in Philadelphia. It's just overinflated confidence from them. And it's not on him because, I mean, he's more of an offensive guy, and their offense is doing considerably well. They're top 10 offense, both, especially in the running game. I think a lot of their issues are on the defensive side of the ball. So this is where you're looking at Matt Patricia, who doesn't have the best track record outside of when he was with New England. But even when he was there, was he really calling the shots on defense, or was it really Bill kind of leading the way? Because we saw what he was doing in Detroit when he was the head coach there. I mean, between him and then who's the actual DC that he has now? Sean Desai or
Sean Desai, but apparently he's at some point a couple weeks ago they started asking him to take more of a backseat role and move back. I guess they've been kind of phasing him out. They didn't like the direction that the defense was going or play calling was going under him. Apparently Matt Patricia is now in charge of their defense.
Right. And I mean, I think a lot of it too is like you're seeing a lot of these teams being able to adapt a lot faster year over year, like going up against them, because last year they were damn near unstoppable all last year. And even if you look at this year, a lot of these wins that they do have, I mean, they only beat the Patriots by 5. They only beat the Commanders by 3. So like a lot of these wins were still ones they kind of like squeaked by. There's not really an oppressive win even on here. And I think that's more of a testament to the league itself, where me and you, we talk about this all the time about there's more parity in sports now than there ever was. And that gap is only going to keep closing. And I think this is what you're seeing is a lot of these teams being able to adapt to their schemes, and maybe he has to adapt to and do something a little bit different, but maybe that's why he's been relying so much on the tush push play with everything. I mean, it is what it is.
Well, and I think we brought this up in the preseason show, or Zoo brought this up about Sirianni and, the loss of those play callers on both sides for him. And it's this thing where when Sirianni was first hired, we played the sound in our salute to Philly. It's one of our favorites of Sirianni's opening press conference, where he cannot put together a sentence to save his life and cannot give any like reasonable answer to what is the team's, formula here. He's not that kind of guy. He's not the big brains guy. He's kind of Dan Campbell-ish, where he's going to get you hyped up. He's going to, be cussing out Chiefs fans going through the tunnel and all this shit. So when you take away his best play callers and you're trying to replace him the very next year, of course you can expect some type of drop off and some type of issues there. The fact that the team is still 11-5, I think it's pretty unfair to start throwing out, hot seat accusations at him. But Philly, and particularly that owner, Jeffrey Lurie, and the GM, Howie Roseman, they aren't necessarily the most patient people. And we've seen that over time. With Andy Reid, they had plenty of years with Andy Reid, but once things got stale, let him go. It kind of worked out for both sides. Both wound up winning a Super Bowl in their respective areas. But Doug Peterson, who's the coach, or second after that, Chip Kelly replaced Andy Reid and got rid of Chip Kelly when you realized that shit was a fad. Doug Peterson replaced him, won a Super Bowl. Next couple of years, loyalty to assistant coaches that weren't really doing what he needed to get done there, and who took the hit? Super Bowl winning head coach fired Doug Peterson, got him out of there. I think Sirianni, they're going to have a serious conversation with him at the end of the season, because at this point, I don't know how well they do in the playoffs. I could easily see them being a one and done here in the playoffs. The way that defense is just getting completely maneuvered, but also on the offensive side of the ball, something that worked for them so well last year was the RPO, the run pass option, where they were already getting blitzed heavy, but they use that RPO and it fits right into Jalen Hurts' skill set, that mobility where he can, fake it to, at that time, Miles Sanders. You can either, get the option there. Am I going to hand it off to him? Am I going to take it off myself, or am I going to throw it? And it was working. It was working tremendously. This year, that stat line on the RPO has dropped tremendously. They have not utilized that under the new offensive coordinator. And you'd argue you could want to use it more when you have an actual great running back in DeAndre Swift back there. So and the fact that fans have been calling for that for about 3 months now, to bring back that RPO, and nothing is working, nothing is going towards that. They have been pretty steadfast in what their offensive scheme is going to be this year. Jalen Hurts himself seemed kind of a little agitated a couple of weeks ago during his press conference, saying that people weren't bought in, and they at first thought he was talking about other players, but it could have been coaches that he was talking about in there. So I think Lurie, Roseman, they'll have a serious conversation with him, with Sirianni at the end of the season, to see where the direction of this team is headed. Hey, what kind of changes are you going to make on the coaching staff and scheme wise for next season? And if he can't get something worked up, I could easily, and this team, goes on about the same projection next year. It's not the same thing in Dallas, where Jerry Jones just lets Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy ruin a franchise and waste its time for years. Philly will get him the fuck out of there and move on to somebody else really quick.
Right. And you bring up a good point, especially with Dougie P. I completely forgot about, the way they treated him after that Super Bowl victory. You had a mediocre season leading up after that. And just like you said, they just cut the dead weight and keep on moving. Like you said, they're not an ownership group or a GM who's going to give you a lot of leash. It's either you're going to perform and you're going to perform well, or you're out. And especially because one person I feel that probably would be a really good fit for the Eagles, say if they did end up getting rid of Sirianni this offseason for whatever reason, would be Ravens DC Mike McDonald.
Yes.
I mean, you see a lot of RPO going on in Baltimore. You can easily bring that into Philly. And then, his defense in Baltimore is outstanding. They really do a really good job there in Baltimore. So bringing that kind of mindset to Philly would probably be a good thing.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Now, moving on to a different area, not about a playoff team at all, but they were slightly on the edge. The Chicago Bears. What a turnaround they made here in the second half of the season. You could almost attribute it to their Pro Bowler Montez Sweat. As soon as they traded for him, he never made a Pro Bowl with Washington. As soon as he gets there, all of a sudden he is like literally saving Matt Eberflus's job there in Chicago. Now you have the case where they are 7-9 at this point, but it doesn't matter ultimately with their first round pick. They have the Carolina Panthers first round pick. They are locked into the number 1 pick overall in this coming draft. So, of course, all the arguments have already begun, and they will last for months unless somebody in Chicago answers it and spares us. Do the Bears keep Justin Fields or trade him away and take Caleb Williams, presumably, at number 1 this year? I will ask you that exact. I don't even want to ask it that exact way, because it's going to be this variation of this question no matter what all over. So let me just get your opinion here and see where you fall in line with me. Justin Fields or Caleb Williams? Who would you rather have going into next season?
Fields.
You would rather have Fields. What has proven himself to you?
I don't think it's so much that it's what he's proven. I think it's goes towards more Caleb Williams, because a lot of if you follow college football, and especially a lot of these prospects coming out into the draft, there are some character concerns that are starting to bubble up now with Caleb Williams, especially with that locker room. I mean, we saw how well they did in their bowl game, and there was a lot of like chirping that was kind of like underhanded chirping against Caleb Williams from the players who actually played that game. And then you see a lot of the same things with work ethic and just, what's the not killer mentality. That's not the way I want to word it, but like it's just he doesn't have that X factor that you're kind of looking for and leadership qualities that you're looking for out of a quarterback. And especially going back to what we talked about earlier about parity in sports. I mean, it feels like every year there's a new generational quarterback coming out. So like for me, if my choice is rolling the dice on another quarterback, whether it's Drake May or Caleb Williams or Michael Penix Jr. or somebody, would I rather roll the dice and try to get a franchise quarterback then, or keep compiling draft capital and drafting all these pieces year in and year out? Because honestly, if they traded back from 1 to like, I don't know, to New England at 3, they want to jump Washington for Caleb Williams, you're going to damn near get the same package that you got from Carolina last year from another team. So you're going to keep stacking extra like first round picks year in and year out if you just keep doing this. And a quarterback's going to come in your lap at some point.
And I understand that with Caleb Williams, and it's scary for me as a Washington fan. I saw Caleb Williams accidentally, quote, like a tweet that was saying the Bears should pass on him and take Marvin Harrison Jr. And, because at that point last week, Washington was, creeping into that number 2 pick. Caleb Williams is a Washington Commanders fan, has been lifelong. He's from D.C. So I think preferably he would like to come here. But it's just tough to me with this Chicago thing on Justin Fields, because Fields does have the talent. We see that. We see the ability. And we've known it since the time at Ohio State. But it's just those games where it does not, like, it's not falling on. You can't use the excuse of the O-line or his receivers in some of these games. It's literally like he doesn't know how to play the position. Like he just has mental lapses sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I like the ceiling of Caleb Williams so much, and adding that to the point that you can get him cheaper than what Fields is going to be in like 2 years. Caleb Williams will be cheaper at that point, just because you're resetting the cap on your quarterback and drafting somebody brand new.
Right. Yeah, no, and I'm looking at the draft list too. I mean, there's plenty of people like, so let's, for all intents and purposes, Chicago, they pick up Marvin Harrison Jr., number 1 overall.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are sitting there at 2.
Yeah.
And you have your pick of the litter. You can do whatever you want. You have Sam Howell already. So like, but what if there's a team that's a couple picks after you guys who are kind of in that same situation right now that Chicago's about to have to do with Fields, and that's the Chargers and Justin Herbert. And they're trying to hit the reset button right now and trying to get rid of things. Would you be willing to package some kind of deal with the number 2 overall pick to trade down with the Chargers to get Herbert to come to Washington?
100%. Yeah, I would take Herbert in a second. I think he is legit on that status. I don't think the Chargers would do that. But I've also been shocked by a lot more in the NFL. So
right.
Yeah, I would take that 100%. I mean, the case that I've actually been thinking more of is, let's say Carolina or Chicago does take Marvin Harrison Jr. or whatever, and Caleb Williams is available there at number 2. I would actually, right now you have Vegas at number 11, Minnesota at 12. I don't like those as much, but Atlanta at 9, and could move up a little bit based off of what happens this coming week. Tennessee at number 7, Jets at 8. I don't think they'll go after somebody with Aaron Rodgers, supposedly coming back.
Mm-mm.
Giants at 5. There are teams that I could be okay with us trading back for a haul. and, passing up on the Caleb Williams thing just because of how much else we need. Marvin Harrison would fit one of those bigger needs right now. So with him off the table, I mean, Caleb Williams, I definitely believe is better than Sam Howell and will be better than Sam Howell will ever be at any point in his career. But yeah, I would take the Hall right now instead of Caleb Williams.
Right. Well, because it's also been proven like year in and year out that like, is it nice to have a franchise quarterback who can kind of put everything on his shoulders and just game manage and do what he needs to do? Absolutely. But like for me, like I feel that it's more important to make sure the supporting cast is set in place and you have the pieces there. So that way, when you do end up bringing that rookie phenom quarterback in there, he has already established weapons. He has an established O-line. He doesn't have to worry about scrambling around like a crazy person,
right?
Like Howell's been having to do right now with all the O-line issues there in Washington. So like, that's where Washington, you trade back with one of these teams that would pull the trigger on their quarterback. You stay in that top 10, you get one of these big tackles to come up and you still have another pick. You're still getting a haul.
If I'm Chicago at this point, in the draft status stays where it is currently, I would be phoning New England if they're staying at number 3 to try and get them to move up. Just whatever you can give, whatever, extra picks. If there's a bidding war, they could probably get a first rounder for next year.
They trade Belichick to Chicago.
Could. Yeah, I mean, you could. It's just to get in there. But I think that would be their best spot and the best potential that they could get from anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's if I'm Chicago right now and I'm figuring out what I want to do at 1, I'm so certain that I'm not making a pick there. I'm just waiting to see, like you said, see where the standings flesh out, see where the draft order is going to be looking like, and I'm starting to make calls like day 1.
Right.
Like 100%. I'm not making a pick. Because like I said, you can do this year in and year out. Like you're not trading your number 1 pick, you're picking up theirs. So like you could hypothetically have 2 first-round picks every year from now till eternity if you just keep flipping that pick to bad teams who are always going to be like how Carolina was this year. They were in the number 1 overall spot.
It's the Houston Rockets method. It's what the Houston Rockets have been doing in the NBA and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like they just keep flipping picks and flipping great players for these picks.
Right.
I mean, I guess it could work.
And it resets those rookie deals every single time.
Right.
Like you're always bringing in some kind of rookie, but I don't know. I guess there's a reason why they're paid the big bucks and I just sit here and pay to be on a show.
Well, hey, look, talking about paying to be on a show. It's not on our docket, but we brought him up, and I'm curious your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers Tuesdays on the Pat McAfee show. Now, we have this is pretty much Scott Ellia Thursdays that we have in here, but you don't go out and accuse somebody else in the network like Zoo of being a pedophile. Not on the air. I mean, not on the air. That's the group chat to his face. But that is exactly what Aaron Rodgers did on the Pat McAfee show this past Tuesday, where he's talking about, for whatever reason, the Epstein Island, Jeffrey Epstein list of clients that's supposed to be released by the end of the month at some point. And
I think it already got released.
For whatever reason, he brought up Jimmy Kimmel. He said he said wait till you see Jimmy Kimmel on this list. I think it's because Jimmy Kimmel was making jokes about Rodgers getting concussed leading to the ayahuasca stuff. There's some type of bitter stuff there. But Rodgers made that joke about him. Kimmel did not take kindly to it. And it wasn't like he was, roasting him back or joking back at him about it. He was threatening straight up legal action on they're owned by the same family. They're owned on the Disney family. So Rodgers continuing to talk out of his ass. Like he loves his freedom of speech. But the shit that he's been saying about, whether it's with vaccines or something about Kelsey or now about Kimmel and, potentially being on a pedophile island. Like, my question is, do you think Rodgers would be this way if he had gotten the Jeopardy job? I think because I've been enjoying pinpointing exactly where people have lost it.
Is that when his villain arc started? When he got denied Jeopardy?
Antonio Brown's started when he got hit by James Harrison in that playoff game against the Bengals when he was still a Steeler. Aaron Rodgers, I think I'm trying to pinpoint it to either he lost the Jeopardy job And that's when he just decided, fuck it, I'm going to say whatever I want now. Or Mike McCarthy drove him insane. Because if he had like 2 or 3 Super Bowls, I don't think he'd be this way.
Right.
I don't think he would need to find himself this deeply.
Well, I think the control on that is going to be Mike McCarthy. We got to start watching Dak to see what's happening. See if he starts slipping a little bit.
I mean,
if that happens,
he's been shaving his head like really religiously, even though like you can see the hairs there. I don't know, like, and he's talking like he's getting that kind of weird, Mr. Unlimited vibes a little bit, that kind of like Russell Wilson vibes in press conferences. So yeah, maybe.
No, I like your thought process around Jeopardy. That would be enough to set anybody down the rabbit hole and just have a spiral of their life happening.
That's why LeVar Burton has been picking people off one by one as a noted serial killer since his failed job opportunity.
Oh God. Now I'm scared. Now I got to worry about LeVar breaking into my house.
He's gonna read your rainbow. Now, another team that Rodgers has familiarity with, and we'll close out with them as we go into Ricks versus Gricks, and that is the Detroit Lions, who, congratulations to them on, they won their division for the first time in, God knows, I think like 30 years or something like that. They'll be hosting a playoff game for the first time in 30 plus years. And their head coach, Dan Campbell, look, I think it was talked ad nauseum right after it happened on that Saturday night game between the Lions and the Cowboys, where there was a 2-point attempt by the Lions. Reportedly, their O-lineman, Taylor Decker, was supposed to have reported himself. You have to report when you're going to be O-lineman cannot catch the ball on their own. They have to report to the ref that they're going to be a eligible receiver. Their O-lineman that did make the catch, the game-winning catch, was apparently not reported in. There was another O-lineman that had reported in, but the Lions are saying that they did. NFL is saying that the Lions are trying to be tricky and cheat and everything. I don't know. All in all, they had like 3 2-point attempts. They didn't get any of the other 2 after that. And I will play for you first Dan Campbell's appearance on a radio show, a local Detroit radio show, where things got a little awkward because I think you and I would be the same way. We would fold if we're attempting to confront Dan Campbell on something, Man Campbell. You don't want to you don't want him angry at you. And this is how it went when these radio hosts brought up the idea that they think the extra 2-point attempts might have been a bad idea.
Like when you got the penalty and move it to
go ahead and say it. Say it. Both of you.
What?
Say it. Say what you want to say.
I think from the 7, it's a low percentage play. I think your chances of winning are lower than if you kick the extra point.
I would like you would say it to anybody else. I'm on the radio. Say it like you want to say it.
Yeah. I thought it was a reckless decision.
Thank you.
Okay, but you don't regret it?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
No.
Do you think it was a reckless decision at all? What do you
No.
This entire everything that happened, what do you make of it?
It just further instills my belief that there should not be any human element as far as referees go in any major league, in any major sports across the world. Like, there's no reason for them to be there on the field. You could easily do that same thing as far as checking in a player or have an O-line check in with somebody. They're going to be an eligible receiver just as easily face to face than you can calling up to a box somewhere. And you go back and you relook at that footage, and it's clear to see what happens. You see number 70 running on the field. The ref is looking at number 70, but what's the other guy's number? It's like 54 or 64. He was
68. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's the one who's actually checking in. So 68's talking to us. Hey, 68's checking in, but the ref's looking at 70. So he hears it, but he's looking at him. And all these refs are fucking boomers, and they don't know what the hell's going on half the time. They take up half the shopping aisle when you're shopping. God forbid you're in a high pressure situation. You got to make a really quick decision and make the right decision. That's another problem. But no, that's something that should have never happened, and I feel terrible for the Lions and for Dan Campbell. I don't feel like it was a reckless decision because, honestly, it worked once. It could work again. I mean, they proved they could have done it.
No.
Oh, sorry, Dan.
Thank you.
No, I'm with you on the human element of it. It's just the fact that the ref was confused as hell. Like, he obviously was just confused. I think it's why, like, at first I thought, like, he obviously just, like, fucked this up and he doesn't want to own up to it.
You
But-
can't do it though. Like, you can't be like,
Right.
oh yeah, I fucked up, but sorry.
Right. And
Whoops.
it had us looking up rules, like it had us looking up the commissioner's, power as to whether he can overturn a game or not. But ultimately, like, I think you have to also take into account that I think it was 34 seconds left in that game. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were unstoppable. There's no telling what would have happened in those 34 seconds, even if they had gotten the 2 points. And I think it was just the fact that they got moved back to the 7-yard line and Campbell still was insistent on going for the 2-point conversion. Like, at that point, dude, like, and when it happened the third time and things got jumbled up again and boom, you get a third shot at it, go with God. God is telling
God's telling you.
like, he's
Just kick the ball.
kick the ball. That's why you have him. Like, just kick the ball.
Yeah, but it's hindsight's always 2020. You're always gonna have that Monday morning, armchair quarterback. You should have done this situation, because what if Dan Campbell did decide, okay, let's go for the field goal this time? They send the field goal, trot him out there, and he misses the field goal.
Thank
He's
you.
like, fuck, I should have just gone for it again. So it's like, there's no coming back from that call. There's no coming back, because you can't fix it in the moment. What's his name? What was it? Brad. I know his first name is Brad. Of course it is. Brad Allen, I think it's Brad Allen was the official who did that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no correcting it, because even if you admit, oh yeah, my bad, I was looking at 70. We just went and looked at the replay, and I see he actually had talked it to me. So we're picking the flag up. You got the 2 points, because then the Cowboys sideline is gonna blow a load, and they're gonna get pissed about something.
Right.
And nobody wants the Cowboys blowing loads.
No.
Well,